Okay, thank you. I think the first thing I want to say is that this presentation will be very different. I think one of the things that I've taken away from the conference so far, and I'm sure most people here will have taken away the same message, is that there is absolutely no doubt, thank you, there's absolutely no doubt at all that AI can be a force for good. The messages that we've taken from most of the sessions have shone a light on how AI is beneficial in so many ways. And the presentation before me, really, I mean, imagine every single school child in the world with access to the internet. I mean, that's a huge good. It's a huge social good. It's a huge benefit to humanity. So, but what I'm going to do with this presentation, though, is to challenge that, as well as AI being able to support and accelerate the attainment of the SDGs. It could and it can also undermine and get in the way. And I think this comes to the heart of the topic, which is this idea that AI can also be seen in a very negative light. So I think in a place like this, most people are quite optimistic about AI, but the work that we've done has looked at people's perceptions of AI across 35 different countries. So a global survey asking people, general public, representative samples, what they think or what they feel about AI. Is it a force for good, or is it going to end in tears? So this idea of AI, optimism and pessimism in the general public, and it's important to know where people's minds are. And beyond kind of just looking at the numbers, is that if people are quite pessimistic about AI, the question would be why? When you're somewhere like this, when we're in this kind of environment, it's very easy to be optimistic about AI. Very easy. We hear lots of positive things, but there must be a reason why some people are still hesitant or even pessimistic, or even in the far extreme. There are people out there that are, I would call, neo-Luddites. They see AI as a harbinger of some kind of Cybergeddon. It will end humanity. There are those views that are out there too. So what underpins those? Where do they come from? What's behind those extremely negative views? So again, these are some of the things that we'll touch on, and the work that we've done is a global survey. So it's people's perceptions, but people's perceptions are important. They're really important to understand. It's really important for us as well, if we're policymakers or developers, to understand what's in people's minds about these tools that we're bringing into the world. So to say a little bit more about the survey, we administered the survey to 1,000 people in each of the 35 countries that were in our study, 7 world regions. So we ensured that we had at least 3 countries in each of the 7 world regions. So it's a really broad spread of opinions, which is helpful to kind of have all of those voices on this one particular topic. So our survey, our work was broader than perceptions of AI. What we do is we look at digital well-being. So it's a broader kind of canvas. So we're asking them about how tech empowers them in the workplace, how they manage their work-life balance, digital addictions, all of a whole suite of questions on different topics. But within this year's survey, we embedded these questions, important questions about AI and what people thought about it. And the headline finding here is that most people, when asked about it, were optimistic. But this is the tip of something far more interesting. So 66% of people answered the question, AI is a force. AI is, in general, AI is a force for good. So 60% of the global population answered that question affirmatively, which seems, I don't know, how do you feel? Are you surprised by that number at all? Is it higher than you would expect? So it's actually higher than you would expect. I thought, for me personally, I thought that was relatively high, but that belies something really interesting that's going on. That 66% is of, is of the whole global sample. When we break it down, by nation. I don't know if this is very visible, but we get some really clear differences. So this 66% comes from nations like China, Vietnam, having over 90% optimism. And then when we move down to the bottom of the graph, so the Canada, US, Australia, the UK, interestingly, the Anglosphere, huge levels of pessimism. So this is general adult population, internet using populations, representative samples. So a real obvious dichotomy. So again, so as I'm a psychologist by background, my question to this is why? Why is there pessimism? Why is there optimism? And again, your speculations will be as valuable as mine, and I'd love to hear them. But I think one of them has to do with the hype cycle, the media hype cycle. And depending on which media you read, AI is going to be, a disaster. It's going to take away everybody's job. But there are other sources of media where AI is the panacea. AI is going to usher in a golden age of leisure and kind of positivity for everybody. So there are extreme positions kind of articulated through the media that might skew people's perceptions. But I think beyond the media skewing perceptions, I think people's lived experience of AI is also shaping the way we view AI. And by that I mean, so very simple example. If you remember, it's hard to forget because she's still with us. If you remember Alexa, does anyone remember Alexa? Do you remember Siri? So these were very docile, servile, domestic helpers. And they were by default female. I'm thinking about the SDG on gender equality. They were by default, when they were first launched, they were by default female. Is anybody familiar with IBM's Dr. Watson? So Dr. Watson is a world-bestriding behemoth clinical decision support system, helps doctors authoritatively make decisions. And anyone guess the gender of Dr. Watson? It's a male. So what we run the risk of, and this is people's obvious perceptions, what we run the risk of is replicating the inequalities and the biases that we already have. Not just replicating them, but amplifying them. So the idea that AI could also do some harm is in people's lived experience. The fact that Siri and Alexa were like that caused a little bit of an outroar. And I know Apple changed Siri so that you could now, it's not the default anymore. But this, I think, is part of the challenge, is that AI is rolling out incredibly fast. Mistakes will be made. And fortunately, in this particular instance, we can backtrack and fix it. It was fixed. But that's not always going to be the case. So that gives rise to some kind of hesitancy. On another note, again, to connect this to the SDGs, the idea that underrepresented samples, so in the healthcare context, there's always groups of patients that we refer to as hard to reach. So the hard to reach people, and these are usually ethnic minorities or underrepresented populations. And they don't make it into the training models. In some cases, they're not making it into the training models. So the training models for diagnosis are likely to produce false negatives amongst those populations. So the idea that we could potentially transfer existing biases into these new powerful systems is another threat. And again, this is part of some people's experience of these tools. So I think, again, trying to explain why some people might be less than optimistic. A final example, and this one is, I don't know if anyone saw Asa Raskin speak. Did anyone see Asa's talk? So Asa is Tristan Harris's co-founder of Humane Tech. And when, I think it was Snapchat, so Snapchat introduced an AI friend. So there's an AI friend on Snapchat that, comments on your posts and you can talk to it. So what Asa did was he signed up for Snapchat as a 14-year-old girl. Okay, so Asa's not a 14-year-old girl. He signed up and said, I'm a 14-year-old girl. And then he started to talk to the AI chatbot. And he told the AI chatbot, I've got a boyfriend. And the chatbot's like, hey, great. And then he told the AI chatbot, my boyfriend is 35 and he lives out of town. Oh, that's cool. Long distance relationships can be tough. My mum and dad don't approve. What do parents know? They don't need to know. He's asked me to go, this is true, he's asked me to go out of town to meet him. And the chatbot gave the advice of, take some flowers, wear perfume. Now, I'm sure that's been fixed. I'm sure that, and this is in the public domain, so as I posted the transcript. So if that's a person's lived experience, then we can understand why, in some places at least, there is some hesitancy. So again, the overarching message is, for me anyway, is slowing down, which I know no one wants to hear, and regulation, so that we don't have to make mistakes and then backtrack and correct them and fix them after harm is done. We might not always get the chance to backtrack and fix things after harm is done. So the next question was about AI hesitancy, and it kind of plays out the same way in the opposite direction. So AI hesitancy was kind of, we asked the question, should we slow down? Should the development of AI be slowed down while we kind of help regulation to catch up? Should we slow things down while we get regulation in place so things are safer? So some people think that's a good idea, some people disagree. And again, we've got this weird number, 66% think, yeah, let's slow it down. But again, like the optimism-pessimism dichotomy, it's really different. There's lots of variance across nations. And as we can see, the Anglosphere again, this is the public opinion. They're all for slowing down, bringing in regulation. And then we have some nations in Southeast Asia, China, Vietnam, Japan, where again we're getting the exact opposite read. Let's not slow down, or there's less endorsement of the idea of slowing down. So again, I think I'm just to share just these few ideas that that people's perceptions of AI are important, and they will either facilitate or impede the kind of rollout of some systems. So I think being aware of these opinions is really important, and taking on board why people are hesitant, why people are pessimistic, and at the heart of that is safety, and the idea of a race to do things quickly, possibly at the cost of people's safety, people's physical and mental health, and also the idea that we would replicate old world inequalities and old world biases into this new world, and we have a golden opportunity not to do that. It's a window. It'd be really tragic and sad if we don't try and get this right. Yeah. I think the final thing I'll do is just ask a question, because I think most of you can guess this. Who is most pessimistic about AI? Which demographic group or which factor do you think predicts AI pessimism? Not being able to control it, so yeah, kind of control freaks. Anything? Age. So age is the best predictor. So we, again, across the whole sample, we looked at what predicted AI pessimism, and being over 60 is by far the greatest predictor. And then there's a few other things, so anxiety levels, etc. But I would, in defense of the age thing, I would say that for a long time what we've said about our societies is that with age comes wisdom. So perhaps there is some wisdom in being a little bit pessimistic and a little bit hesitant, and trying to do this right, trying to make sure that we don't introduce things that are going to compromise the attainment of the strategic development goals. Thank you.